Hey everybody, this is John from Pioneer Nexus MTG with another deck overview. This time, Izzet Creativity. If you do like these informative deck overviews, please consider subscribing to the channel, giving us a thumbs up, and leaving a constructive comment down below. So this is very similar to a deck that we've already covered, and that being the Teamer Creativity deck. The Teamer Creativity deck shares a lot of cards in common with this deck, with one important exception: what the win cons are and what the deck's trying to do. The Teamer Creativity deck is more of a combo deck, trying to hit World Spine Worm, Xenagos, Creativity for 2, just overwhelm your opponent with one-shot KO. It does sideboard into a very similar deck to what this deck is trying to execute, with copies of Coma or Hullbreaker or Izzet just being difficult to deal with threats for your control opponents primarily. This one is more of a mid-range control deck. It's trying to use Creativity to spin into Torrential, Gearhulk, and Hullbreaker and just take over the game from a bunch of value. As far as the run cons, obviously Torrential, Gearhulk, powerful instance in the graveyard. This flashes it back. And then Hullbreaker, if you untap with it, you tend to take over the game, especially if you're playing with a bunch of instants and sorceries like this deck does. Just being able to protect it, bounce your opponent's key spells, kill their other stuff, kind of how you win the game. To that end, you are trying to use Indomitable Creativity to hit tokens, to flip into these cards. You're not playing any other creatures besides that, but you do have plenty of token generators. Things like Magma, Opus, discarding it, getting a treasure token. Unexpected Windfall and Big Score, effectively the same card. 4 mana, discard a card, draw 2 cards, make 2 treasures. Fable the Mirror Breaker makes a Goblin token, makes a Reflection, makes a treasure tokens off of the Goblin itself, allows you to filter your draws with your discard ability. Prismara Command makes treasure tokens, etc. It's primarily what the deck's trying to do. You can also make tokens with Sekenzan, with its channel ability. One of Mutavault can also be something you can target potentially, although a little bit mana intensive. Beyond that, you're using things like Fiery Impulse and Fires of Victory to keep yourself alive in the meantime, as well as Jawari Disruption or things like Censor. Spikefield Hazard, very similarly, plays a nice role keeping you alive in the early turns. And then Izzet Charm as kind of a pseudo Spell Pierce, damage, or filtering. Omen of the Sea to help you filter your draws. Spell Pierce to help protect the combo or disrupt your opponent. Shark Typhoon also can make things off of that, or potentially hard cast it, then cast a bunch of spells and win that way. And then Dig Through Time, just a nice way to draw a bunch of spells. Sideboard, we're going to see more copies of Shark Typhoon, primarily here for the control matchups. The same thing with Izzet. It's a very hard to kill threat that can't be countered, makes things annoying for them. Vampire's Vengeance deals 2 damage to each non-vampire creature. Create a blood token. Sweeper with a body, or sweeper with a token attached. Rending Volley, once again, I've said this a million times, primarily here for spirits, angels, Greasefang. Spell Pierce to help protect your combo as well as disrupt your opponent, again in the combo and the control matchups. Disdainful Stroke, mono green, control decks, potentially 5-color Izzet. Negate, once again, here to disrupt your opponent, protect your combo. Narset's Reversal, once again, protect your combo, good against things like Thought Distortion, interesting play to counter spells. And then Mystical Dispute, anything with blue, spirits, control, etc. Other version, this one's a little bit more of a spicy meatball. This one's a little bit more on the Torrential Gearhulk side of things rather than the Hullbreaker Horde side of things. You're trying to get a very powerful instant in your graveyard. Either Creative Outburst, deals 5 damage to any target, look at the top 5 cards of your library, put one of them in your hand, rest in the library in any order. Once again, you can discard it to make a treasure token. Same thing with Magma Opus. Magma Opus, deal 4 damage, chooses any number of targets, tap 2 permanents down, create a 4/4, draw 2 cards. Basically, huge amount of value attached to a 5/6 body that you're using to flash it back. Beyond that, you're still using a lot of the same things. Basically it's a lot of the same tools. Obliterating Bolt here is a way to deal with problematic creatures, especially that go a little bit bigger than what you were used to dealing with. Can exile something like an Old Growth Troll or something without your opponent getting any value from it, and obviously quite nice that it now hits Planeswalkers, whereas Lava Coil did not. Land base, very similar. You're running that. You're running some Spikefield Hazard middle base lands. Basically, you're a red-based deck with Indomitable Creativity, trying to get into these very powerful creatures with your Indomitable Creativity, but you can also hardcast your Torrential Gearhulks and your Hullbreaker Horrors with the addition of the clue tokens if you happen to draw them. Sideboard, once again, going to see a lot of the same things. Izzet and Hullbreaker Horror primarily for the control matchups. Shark Typhoon, the same thing. Instant speed threat makes it hard for them to deal with. You can hit them with a 6/6 creature out of nowhere at their end step. Obliterating Bolt when you need a little bit bigger, go bigger, dealing with bigger creatures. Things like Kalidas and such, potentially. Rending Volley, once again, anything green or white. Spirits, Angels, Greasefang. Disdainful Stroke, primarily here for mono green and control mirrors, and then Spell Pierce to help protect your combo, and also disrupt your combo-based opponents just a tiny bit. And also, don't forget, Disdainful Stroke can also come in against Lotus Fuel combo, as most of their big spells cost 4 or more. So, it's kind of what the deck does. It's very similar to the Teamer one that we've already covered, if you want to take a look at that for a little bit more in-depth overview. Basically, this deck is very good against creature-based decks, very good at going over the top against Rakdos if they don't have very specific disruption. Tends to struggle into, well, let me guess, control decks, because counterspells kind of wreck your day a little bit. That's why you see a lot of the threats in the sideboard, whether it be the Shark Typhoons, the Izzets, the Hullbreaker Horrors, potentially even something like a Coma in the more Teamer-based version of the deck. Just difficult to answer threats for control decks if they don't have a sweeper, or even if they do have a sweeper, that are uncounterable, making the counterspell plan a good bit worse in post-board games. But overall, this is a controlling mid-range combo deck, although this one is more on the value plan rather than just kill you with a one-shot Wormcoil, Worldspine Worm Xenagos combo, or Sage of the Falls, Lotus God, whatever you wanted to do in the Teamer variant of the deck. But has very good against creature-based decks that are 3x or less, so, can be good against Greasefang because of the instant speed removal you have with Fiery Impulse and Fires of Victory. Can be very good against, mono white, can be very good against the Spirits deck, etc., even though the Spirits decks do have counterspells and stuff, and you do have a ton of removal that lines up quite good against what they're trying to do. So you have some back and forth with those kind of games. You can kind of go over the top of what Rakdos is doing, especially if you ever resolve into Creativity. And then, you tend to struggle into the hard control decks with a bunch of counterspells, hence why you bring in all these threats that are uncounterable. But that is Izzet Creativity, non-combo version. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. Hope to see you for the next deck overview.